I could feel very high.
It's a new day on the Enterprise, and we're having another go at getting to Riser for a little hollybobs. Today's roadblock is a distress call, and the guy we meet will be talking for a while, so let's go ahead and slap a name on him. And with this result of Captain Archer by Lieutenant Leo, we identify a fundamental flaw in the Wheel of Names. See, past me wasn't smart enough to block entries including names of main characters for shows we were not yet reviewing. Given how this will affect today's video, I'm making the executive decision to give our guest a technological upgrade and call him Captain Arbolist. Captain Arbolist has some technical problems, but it's a simple repair and we soon get him flying again. He insists on repaying Archer and Tucker with some hospitality back home, and despite Archer trying to explain we're on our way for some shore leave, he won't take no for an answer. Tucker in particular isn't delighted by the news, not least of which because Captain Arbolist lives on a desert planet, but informing him our host has promised to be very hospitable indeed does the job. The planet itself is somewhat less hospitable, which is a diplomatic way of saying it's hotter than a fire elemental's nutsack. Captain Arbolist is good on his word, though, and providing a feast for his saviors. He also offers us a piece of art, a sculpture made by Suliban. We don't get chance to discuss that, as it's time for a bit of sweaty sports ball. While they get dehydrated, the Enterprise is receiving a call. An official from a city on the edge of the desert wants to know why we've sent a shuttle down to a camp, and once T'Pol explains, we're told we'll probably never see them again. T'Pol thinks this might be worth interrupting the festivities, and phones Archer to tell him that Captain Arbolist, according to the official at least, is a wanted terrorist. Under the circumstances, Archer coming back to the ship might be a smart call. Archer tries to make our excuses, saying there's a breakdown we need to repair immediately, but that doesn't work. Captain Arbolist was told by one of his mates that the Enterprise received a call from the official, and he's not chuffed at Archer bailing. Despite this, he wants to explain his side of the story, along with why he really asked Archer to come here. It's lore dump time. Captain Arbolist is telling Archer about his history, specifically how he's part of a group that was previously oppressed to the point of being forced to wear identifying clothes in public. This changed some time back, at least on paper. See, on paper is where it stayed according to Captain Arbolist. The promised equality never materialized, and the group represented by the official who called us still holds all the power. A decade of protests did nothing, so he and the rest of his clan decided to withdraw to the desert and start using force. And Captain Arbolist thinks this should matter to Archer because they're fighting a losing battle. A ship like the Enterprise could change that, and the tactical skills of a man like Archer. As if to prove his point, we start hearing kabooms outside. This, says Captain Arbolist, is a regular bombardment by their enemies. Archer tries to tell Captain Arbolist that he's made a mistake. Unfortunately, trying to argue that he's not some sort of wandering hero is difficult when Captain Arbolist has heard about the Suliban internment camp we shut down, and even more so when the story has been warped by exaggeration. According to what he's heard, we're now the liberators of the downtrodden masses, or some shit. Further debate is halted by the need for Captain Arbolist to go and fight. Archer and Tucker are told trying to scarper in their shuttle would end poorly, so they're stuck in a bunker to wait out the attack. T'Pol tries to call again as the Enterprise has noticed all of those kabooms, but we can't get through because phones are being jammed in the area. As a rescue mission probably isn't smart during a bombardment, she tries to call the official from the city once more and ask if they wouldn't mind knocking that shit off. Down in the bunker, Archer's bemoaning his tendency to interfere. A nearby kaboom ends his self-pity by bringing a portion of the roof down, so the two decide being somewhere else is probably wise. They've taken Captain Arbolist's advice on not trying to fly away, though, so after grabbing some supplies from the shuttle, scarper into the desert. To the Enterprise once more, where T'Pol's talking to the official again. He's now very suspicious of us, as T'Pol said Archer and Tucker would be leaving, and that's not happened. An offer to go and fetch them is construed as an attempt to land more reinforcements for Captain Arbolist. With a warning that any attempt to land will be considered aggression, he hangs up, and then starts blocking our sensors too, just to bugger any chance of locating the away team. Archer and Tucker are hiking. Archer saw more buildings during the flight in, so they're off to try and find them. Unfortunately, this means moving while the sun is up, as Archer thinks they need shade. That's assuming Tucker can stay on his feet, and they can both avoid being spotted by the searching ships. The former of those concerns proves the most serious, and Tucker's soon suffering badly. Keeping him moving is of prime importance, even if it means using the last of their water. Upon the Enterprise, we have an unexpected guest. Captain Arbolist has turned up and, in the face of questions from T'Pol, insists on coming aboard. One quick chat later, and he now understands that Archer's reputation was somewhat overstated, especially the bit about him being a tactical genius at desert warfare. He's about to leave when we point out that Archer and Tucker are still down there and we can't scan for them. Captain Arbolist managed to get to us by traversing a weak point in the enemy sensors that happens every 3/4 of an hour, but it's a particularly intricate course and thus not something he can teach. That means he's being volunteered to join a rescue team. The idea doesn't appeal, but T'Pol pointing out it's his fault and that his enemies now consider Archer and Tucker fair game changes his mind. On the plus side, at least Archer and Tucker have now found shelter. There's even some water, though Archer's sniff test concludes drinking it would be decidedly unwise. That's just an excuse to show off his camping skills, so he starts a fire to boil the water. I mean, okay, the result tastes like bollock sweat strained through a marathon runner's sock, but it's water and that's what matters. Or would have mattered some time earlier. Tucker's condition has deteriorated, and Archer's concerned he's got heat stroke. That means keeping him awake, so Archer's distracting him with talk of what food he wants when they get back to the ship. Their return might not be far away. We've managed to get a shuttle to the surface, though the search is hampered by needing to stay low. At least we have an expert on the local terrain to help us search. Looks like somebody's found them first. As Archer struggles to keep Tucker conscious, a nearby kaboom does the job for him. It would appear they've been targeted, which means a bit more scarpering. It also means the shuttle has something to focus on, and once Captain Arbolist confirms the place is unknown to him, T'Pol concludes that must mean Archer and Tucker are there. Artillery turns the rubble into slightly smaller rubble as our pair flee, then the shuttle returns the favour and murderizes the artillery. Archer's understandably a little concerned by all of this, but soon realizes who it is, and we all bugger off somewhere significantly less kaboomy. Captain Arbolist is leaving the Enterprise. He needs to get through the sensors while there's a gap, and he doesn't really have a reason to stay now he knows the truth. It's the right call as far as T'Pol's concerned, so we'll leave Archer to contemplate just how much of his power he should allow himself to wield in the future as we get ready to take another step on the long road. No good deed goes unpunished. This phrase is, arguably, the moral of today's story, as Archer's decision to do more than simply free himself and Travis from detention a few episodes ago has come back to bite him in the arse. I say this not as a judgment on the respective ethics of that episode or this one, but as acknowledgement that any intervention can have wide-reaching implications far beyond the event in question. We're tickling the prime directive again, of course, the as-yet unwritten rules of how best to not bollocks up other species during our galactic poke around. Starfleet's magnum opus may sometimes feel like buck-passing at best or cowardice at worst, but it's also a tacit admission that simply having good intentions is never enough to guarantee a positive outcome. I've regularly repeated that I like my trek to come with consequences, so today's story is right up my alley. Archer's previously earned good boy points have bought him a reputation, and that means he's fair game for anybody who believes they have a righteous cause, or believes they can convince him they have one anyway. As to the cause in this episode, well, we aren't told if Captain Arbolist was being honest about any of it. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, a topic covered in depth by Deep Space Nine. We're given enough data to imply our meeting him was anything but accidental, but that in and of itself wouldn't prove a deliberate attempt to deceive, rather than simple desperation on his part. He certainly doesn't seem to hold a grudge at the end, and he makes no attempt to ransom the safety of Archer and Tucker in exchange for military support. Whatever the truth here, he seems to believe his cause is just. The episode isn't without issues though, so let's pick some holes. Our meeting with Captain Arbolist raises some questions regardless of how it happened. If crossing paths wasn't planned, then that's a very tenuous coincidence indeed, given everything else we learn. If it was deliberate, which seems the far more likely option to me, that raises a raft of questions about how Captain Arbolist was able to learn the position and course of the Enterprise in order to be near enough for a distress call. Given that we often don't know where we're going ourselves until Archer has one of his whims, these requirements don't seem particularly likely. In fact, we know we're not currently following a pre-arranged route because it was T'Pol's idea to detour for Risa. Maybe we could put this down to espionage, as hinted by Captain Arbolist intercepting the call to Enterprise from a nearby city, but that feels like an unfeasibly complex spy network for the losing side of a local war. While we're pointing out problems, our old enemy the Sun comes back to cause issues in continuity. I did a whole bit about this for DS9's baseball episode, but here we get a similar change of shadow directions for two allegedly linked shots. To be fair, this is quite simply the reality of external filming on a schedule, and nobody's fault. If we wanted to be generous, we could again put it down to weird orbits or whatever. There's also a slight audio hiccup in today's episode too. Either I'm imagining things or Clancy Brown had to loop in quite a few of his lines. For those who don't know, this is the practice of dubbing an actor's voice into a scene after it's been shot, often because there was an audio issue with the original recording. This is not uncommon, as it's a lot cheaper than refilming the whole thing, and when done right, the result can be indistinguishable. I'd wager there are plenty of examples that have completely passed me by, and I'm in no way trying to cast shade on the sound department here. In this instance, however, it's caused a few minor issues that are most noticeable in the shuttle bay. As well as some lip-syncing mismatches, there's also a difference in how he sounds compared to other characters. Reed's voice sounds like he's in an open area with some echoing, so I'd guess it's the original. Captain Arbolist's voice, on the other hand, is the pure and clear result of a professional audio booth. With all of that said, none of the above are what you'd call deal breakers, and they don't ruin the end result. We've got a perfectly serviceable episode with shaky ethics, and whilst I personally think DS9 has better examples of moral grey areas regarding the nature of using physical force for political aims, this is still fine in its own right. If you want to be generous, we're given a little bit of character growth too. Archer lamenting his inability to leave things well enough alone is another example of him realizing that just because he can do a thing doesn't mean he should. Picking your own battles is hard enough. Picking other people's is a whole different can of worms. End of episode.
I don't get it. You're literally being given what you wanted.
I'm not, though, am I? What I wanted was whatever was different.
We're getting that. We're going to Risa now just like you planned.
Which means it's not what's different now, it's the official line.
It sounds like you're just trying to be contrarian.
Honestly, yeah, but there's more to it. Don't this feel dodgy to you? Planning a mutiny in the season that just happens to have promise of an holiday near the end.
Are you saying the guy who makes these was letting us organize a mutiny because he'd always intended to derail it here with a change of direction?
These shows are a quarter-century old, so he must have known the Risa detour were coming. Maybe that was the idea all along, and the mutiny was never supposed to happen.
But then you scuppered that by deciding you wanted something different before the something different came along? It all seems a bit convoluted, to tell you the truth.
Of course it's convoluted, it's bloody Star Trek. All I know is it's the official plot now, so I'm doing something else. Bugger Risa, we've got a regime change to plan. Roof.